welcome to the taping of the history of Grand Prairie, Texas, as we do historical documentaries of people that have been important to the history of our city and that are even continuing to make history. And this is going to be our history tape number 232. And we're very excited on this August the 30th as we pre-tape in advance a history for later on in September and bring to you a very special guest. Dr. Chap Isham has been in Grand Prairie just several years, and we're going to talk about him in a special way other than as a retired psychiatrist, for he is an artist in his own right, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Dr. Isham, we're very glad to have you on the set today, young man.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right. Now, Dr. Isham, this is going to be your camera to your front and a little bit to your left. And I'd like for you to look into that and tell us a little bit about your history, name your mother and father, and where you came from before you came from Grand Prairie, Texas.
Well, I came from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I grew up there. Mm-hmm. My father was president of a manufacturing company, and before I came to Grand Prairie, I lived in many places because being a doctor, we moved around a great deal to Pittsburgh, New York, St. Louis, and Lubbock, Texas. I practiced in Lubbock, Texas for about 20 years doing child and adult psychiatry. And
would you give us your father's name and your mother's name?
My father's name was Asa Chapman, the same as mine. My mother's name was Mary Elizabeth.
All right.
And there weren't any art. I have a cousin who was an artist, but there weren't any artists in the background. There were a lot of doctors, lawyers, and some judges and people like that.
All right. And your recently deceased wife, you would give us her full name, and while we're doing that, we need to show and tell. You don't have a portrait of her, and that's unusual, but we do have some photographs that I think we'd like to add to the history with your permission. So if you'll just sit real still, I'm going to put this over here where our camera can pick this up, and maybe we can get a shot of Mrs. Isham while you're giving us her name. Would you give us her full name?
Her name is Charlotte Klotz Isham. Klotz Isham.
All right.
And I don't see the picture.
Yes, it's up there. And who's in the photograph other than you?
Oh, there are a lot of other people there, and she's in the center there.
All right.
Sitting on the couch, and the rest of the family.
All right, we're going to, what was the occasion for this happy gathering of this group?
I can't see that very well.
Well, it's there.
I think it was either a birthday or Christmas or something.
Uh-huh.
And there's another picture you have of her with her brother and me.
All right, and her brother, would you give his name?
His brother is Dr. Arthur Klotz, and he is in Tucson now, but he was professor of medicine at the University of Kansas.
All right. And you have a family. After you have lost your wife, you still have a family that we'd like to document. So would you begin with the photographs that you have over there at your knee, and let's show and tell and name your family, and begin with Paul.
We had 4 children.
All right.
And Paul, who is now the city attorney in Grand Prairie, was the oldest.
All right.
And this is a portrait.
All right, this is a portrait
I did of him years ago.
Oh, that's very good. See, now that's going to come out real good, Dr. Isham.
Kind of looks like him.
Yes, it does. All right. And he's the elder son?
He's the eldest son.
All right, let's go to the next one.
The next one was Mary. That's my daughter.
All right.
Who lives in Grand Prairie.
All right, give us her married name.
It's Mary Brown.
All right.
And she was the head of the ambulance committee, and I think she's on the library committee.
All right, let's put her right here and go to your next one, please.
Then there was Carl.
Okay, your next son was Carl.
Carl Isham, and we lost him to cancer when he was 28 years old. It was very tragic. And He's no longer with us.
All right, and the next?
And the last, my youngest son is John. These don't look exactly like the person. This was done a long time ago, but they remind me in a special way of my children that a photograph doesn't, because I sat there and did these.
Yes, and you remember painting them. Did you do this from memory, or did you have them sit for you?
They sat for me.
They sat
And
for
the reason I don't have a portrait of my wife is that she didn't like to have her picture painted for some reason. But she was very appreciative of art and a great deal of encouragement to me.
Well, you've mentioned your career as a psychiatrist. When did you spin off into the love of art?
I started when I was in Pittsburgh. I was a resident at the Psychiatric Institute, and the occupational therapist there was a very nice woman named Mrs. Campbell, and I went up to see what she was doing and discovered that she liked to do watercolors. And when she found out that I might be interested, she brought me a book by Elliot O'Hara. You probably have never heard of him, but he was a great American watercolorist, deceased. And I read the book and started painting watercolors, of which this one beside me is one of them. And ever since then, I've been fascinated with doing watercolors and prints.
All right. Now, I believe you said you moved to Grand Prairie in 1981. What brought you to our fair city?
Well, my family, because my daughter had moved here before.
I see.
And I retired in Lubbock, and Dallas seemed to be a natural area to come to.
All right. Now, when you were a psychiatrist, did you paint during those years also? And did you extend yourself, like being the president of the Arts Association, like you have been here in Grand Prairie?
Yes, I used to paint on vacations and in spare time. I didn't like to play golf particularly. And I belonged to American Physicians Art Association. And I would just paint in my spare time, sometimes on the living room floor with a cat walking around on a picture of the dog or something like that. And I found soon that there are lots of people who love to paint, and this is a very good way to get acquainted with people and make many friends I had that were artists. I think among artists are wonderful friends. Just as doctors are too, so that I think held my interest a great deal. I was one of the founders of the West Texas Watercolor Association, and I've been on the board and officer in a great many different organizations. I was president of the Texas Visual Arts Association, which is in Dallas, and the Grand Prairie Art Association. I did the newsletter for the Arlington Art Association, and I'm a signature member of Artists and Craftsmen, and I was active and did quite a bit of work in Southwestern Watercolor Society.
Now, another thing, you're an author. Yes, let's talk about this. Let's talk about your book, because this has Creating Art History by Chap Isham.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
This is one of those ideas that didn't succeed, you might say, because I sold about 200 books and that's all. I've given the rest of the books to the public schools here so they can use them if they want to. The idea was to make drawings of great pictures that you can color with color pencils, and if you're careful, you can do a pretty good job of it. I actually gave a course in this and found that coloring these wasn't as easy as I thought it was. Anyway, over here is a synopsis of this particular period in art history. And there is no book in art history that's simple and easy to read. The other books are very thick, big volumes. They are used for college courses, which I took in that, but it takes a whole year to go through one of those big books. This was just a a simple resume. It's really not for children. It's not meant to be just a coloring book. It's meant to help somebody get acquainted with art history.
That's wonderful. All right, now let's show and tell some of the work that you've done, and then we're going to get into the special medium that you're attached to. But let's start with your picture that's on the chair to your absolute right. You want to tell us about that one first?
Well,
just leave it right there, and I think that you can talk about it and leave it, and they can get a shot of you there with that.
Okay.
All right.
That was my entry in the American Physicians Art Association the first year, and I won first prize.
Yes.
There were other first prizes, but that is the Scout Lodge at Pittsburgh. We were in Pittsburgh at that time. Well, you can imagine how exciting that was to me.
Oh, yeah.
And that was cinched me as an artist.
All right. Okay.
Once you do that, of course, I didn't win the first prize every year.
All right, and what's the next one? If you'll pull up your next display and tell us about it.
Now, this is a watercolor,
Okay.
and these others are prints. They're
All right.
linoleum block prints. And these I've done these are done recently. This is window from the Freiburg Cathedral in Germany. My wife and I spent a month there, and I actually sat in the cathedral and painted this as a watercolor, and it was in the Southwestern Watercolor Society exhibit. And this is a print I made from it. If I may digress, this was an interesting experience because you don't just go in the church and paint. You usually ask somebody's permission. I asked the priest if I could paint in the side section, and I try to get out of where nobody will notice me. I don't want to be a center of attention. I want to get somewhere where I won't be noticed. So I sat off in the corner, and he said it was all right. And a few minutes later, he turned on all the lights in the cathedral for me, and all these people started gathering around. So I did this picture with quite an audience.
With an audience, all right.
Yeah,
That's
and
wonderful.
I enjoyed that picture very much.
All right, you're next. I'll take your cathedral.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We had a room in the hotel right across from the cathedral, and this print I made last week. This was the view we had from the balcony of our room. Isn't that wonderful?
Isn't that wonderful?
Couldn't believe it. You'd walk out on the balcony, and here was this magnificent tower. The Freiburg Cathedral is considered the most beautiful tower in the world by some people.
All right, thank you.
This is a print I did 2 weeks ago from a watercolor I found in the closet. It's a picture of farm machinery, and I used 2 blocks, and in the background you'll see the Joe Pool Lake construction, which is from a print that's in the Chamber of Commerce. I thought it went well with this, and I liked that.
All right.
You know, sometimes the artist likes the picture and nobody else does. I've had that experience. I've also had the experience of people liking a picture you did that you never thought was any good. So.
All right. Oh, we all love that one. Tell
This
us
cow
about
picture I did a couple of years ago. It's won a lot of awards, and it was just a happy thought to make the lace on the cow's face, because these Herefords have light-colored, frizzly hair all over the front of their heads.
All right.
That one's called Holy Cow.
Holy cow, that's a good name for that one, isn't it?
Now, this is, I just put this in because it's a picture of Grand Prairie, and
I love that.
that's the way it looks out there in the field. If you go out there and look, you see these little trees all along and the houses, and it's a very pretty landscape, really. I have a lot of versions of that. Now, the St. Louis City Hospital was where I interned, and they asked me to do a picture for the reunion they had 2 years ago, informing their alumni association. They sent me a beautiful photograph from which I made this this print, and it was given away as a door prize at this dinner party they had for about 150 doctors. And then they made the brochure that they had. They gave all the doctors a brochure. They put the print on the cover.
That is very exciting.
Those are exciting things that happen.
Yes.
You know.
All right.
This is just a picture of Iris. I had 3 other versions of this. They've all been sold, but and this one, I just threw this in here. This is a Redbird Mall. And if you go out there, you'll see that corn dog sign out there. And in this case, I experimented and printed one print over another and got this kind of exciting, like, you know, the place is jumping.
Yes.
And that's what it is out there, jumping.
At Redbird Mall. That is wonderful.
Things are really cooking out there. This is a print of it's called Bluebonnet Farm, and it's just a Texas landscape. This was done from a photograph. I don't do pictures from photographs, and it's actually my most popular print. I've sold a lot of these to other artists.
How many different blocks did you have to use to get that many colors,
I put different colors on the block. So with this one, I think it's just a 1-block print. I may have printed the sky separate. I believe I did. Often you have to do the sky separate. Anyway, for some reason, that's my most popular picture. Not necessarily the one that I like the best. And this one is in Burnett, Texas. I went down there to a workshop with Al Brulette, and we had a delightful time and did this tree as a acrylic painting and made it into a print. And I like this picture. This is one I like, but I don't get too much response on. To show you what the block is like, it's made from. See, these are all made from a printing block, and this block is made with vinyl. It's called drafting vinyl. I buy it at the engineering store, but I learned I can get it in Chicago much cheaper if I buy a whole roll. It's very flexible, and you can paste it onto the hardboard. That just happens to be on there. And then you carve it. You can cut it with the scissors, and it's easy to carve. And it's the same, you might say, as linoleum block printing. It's just a different, I use vinyl instead of linoleum. It's much stronger than linoleum. It doesn't damage easily, and it lasts for years. So you can keep using it. It does tend to harden a little bit with age.
All right. Now, that's some of the beautiful...
I've talked enough.
No, you haven't. No, you haven't, because we have one other show and tell here. You're even displayed on a calendar, your work is. So yes. Let's show that and tell about your calendar there. Well,
this calendar was a surprise to me just 3 days ago. I was in the show of the Texas Association for Homes and Services for the Aged and the Texas Educational Agency for the Aged, and I won the first prize, and they had a show at the Dallas Museum of Art. This is my biggest thrill, maybe, except for that first watercolor. They had a show there for us, and the picture hung in the museum for a month, and then just the other day I got these calendars which they put out and send around. That's a cover. It's not all me. They're different people who won prizes. Some of these are first in their categories. And they put...
You're in July, right?
I'm in June.
Oh, you're in June. Oh, wonderful.
And they mark it, they send these around. See, there's all the institutions that are members of this.
All right. And would you show us the picture that's on your June calendar right here up close? We didn't get a real good
there it
shot
is, right
I know, but I wanted to show them up with this one. How's that?
Okay.
All right. And now this is the calendar, and that is your entry that won first place, that got your picture in the calendar,
Yeah.
right? Oh, that is wonderful.
Well,
and what is the title of this one?
Cowboy.
Cowboy. And in it, I noticed that you have your bum steer over to one side.
That's not the same cow.
That's not the same cow. That's another one.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that one named?
No, that is taken from another block that has... I've learned that I can print off of different blocks and put them into a picture. This cowboy is actually about this tall, the original block, and the cow is part of a 3-cow picture. And the one on the right was an entry in Western Days. So I printed the 3 together, and that was the luckiest thing I ever did, because all this business came out of it.
Yeah, of 3 different blocks for 3 different other presentations,
other prints,
right?
Yeah. I took 3 different blocks. You know, like I printed first one, and then the other one, and then the third one, and made this picture that way.
All right. Now, where can we see some of your work hanging? I know that you have a series in the Chamber of Commerce because you won first prize when we did the Sesquicentennial of Texas, I believe. Yeah. And you have a display there. I've seen some of your work at the First Presbyterian Church where you attend church, and any other places in town. And I have one of your works in that I have that great big wonderful catfish.
Oh yeah.
Yes, yes. I got that when we had something at the First Presbyterian Church, and so I have that.
Yes, I appreciate
yes,
that
yes,
you like that.
Yes.
That catfish was in the Texas Fine Arts Show, and it was in the City Hall for a few days.
All right. Any other places that some of your work is hanging?
I don't have any in galleries right now.
I know that you did have a show recently. Your son had a show for you in his home.
Yes, that was at my son's house. They have a lot. Yeah, she has a lot of pictures, and they're still hanging in there.
Yes.
So if you wanted to see them, you could call her. She's kind of my unofficial public relations person.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, Mr. Isham, we know that you were the founding president of the Grand Prairie Visual Arts Association here in Grand Prairie. Do you still work with them actively?
Yeah, I try to. I hadn't been too well lately, but I hope to do more. And this organization, incidentally, Jim Adams and Jim Russell are 2 people who have done a great deal for us. You don't have to be an artist to belong. In fact, some of the best people we've had to help us have been non-artists. They just like artwork. And we've had some really excellent programs this past year with very low attendance. We had one program where Jim Adams got this lady in Dallas who sells old master prints to museums. She brought over about $50,000 worth of old master prints, including Albrecht Dürer for $10,000 if you wanted it. But we all got to handle these and look at them. And there were only about 6 or 8 of us there. And I see these people painting in Grand Prairie, and I wish they would get interested in the local art association because of the connections it might lead you to.
Yes.
And the people you would get to know. And we have some very fine artists in that group.
And you helped bring the first juried art show to Grand Prairie, Texas for Western Days several years ago, and we've had a juried show ever since then. And
I think they had them before, but we ran it after a while.
All right, and then besides that, you have won first place at Grand Prairie, my hometown, entry into that Western Days art show. You've had several presentations in that, and what other honors have you had in your artwork?
Well, I've won a lot of awards, and I don't want to try to make a list of them all. I don't know which are the most kind of awards are most exciting. The question is it more exciting to sell a picture or to win an award?
Yes.
One.
Yes.
I'm not sure which. And the other is, all the artists' problem is that the judges, whether you win an award or not, there's a certain amount of luck because the judges don't always pick the best pictures. No matter how good the judge is, he'll invariably pick a couple that you don't like. And when you enter shows, I think you just have to be prepared to be disappointed. It's one thing, you're thrilled if you win a prize, but it doesn't seem to be near as traumatic as not winning one or being rejected.
All right, now we want to show and tell a little bit because you do an outreach to all of these in that you have these wonderful all-occasion cards and some gorgeous Christmas cards that are very personally done, and I want you to hold these up and talk about them a little.
Well, these are just little block prints. These are done the same way as the bigger ones, only I do them on little blocks. And of course, they're not as complicated. This is hibiscus.
All right.
And I could carve these little blocks when we go on a trip or something. And I found them just lots of fun and also very educational to me because using small compositions like this, you learn that you don't always make a good card. You know, sometimes it doesn't turn out well. And it teaches you quite a bit about colors and composition.
That's beautiful. That's a vertical one, but isn't that lovely?
That's Prairie, who was Ramesses II's wife, and she was in that exhibit they had, Ramesses II.
Now this must be New Orleans down on Basin Street or something. That's wonderful.
No.
No? Close?
No, you weren't even close.
Not even close.
This is in the city park in Dallas. I think
yes.
this is it's called the George House.
Yes, yes. That's some of the gingerbread.
And I sat out there and tried to draw that house. I did a picture. I have a picture of it, and it has one award. But that house, drawing that house was something. I mean, you know, perspective.
All right. Dr. Isham, you're not going to believe it, but we're out of time.
I can believe it.
Oh, and it has been so wonderful to have you with us and to show and tell.
I appreciate being asked.
Oh, yes, and it's wonderful. And you tell our city attorney, Paul Isham, that he was nice to let you get off this afternoon and come and be with us. And thank you, Dr. Isham.
Thank you, Ruthie. We appreciate this.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.